just want to thank you to start, Bedros.
Thanks, bro.
This is an amazing opportunity. And I reached out to Bedros a year ago, and I texted him and said, hey, Bedros, I started a podcast. He's like, great, man, that's awesome. And I was like, if you ever have 15 minutes to spare, maybe we could get on a video or something. He's like, sure, dude. And a year later, I'm actually here live.
Yeah.
I flew in last night, and I'm kind of blown away to be here. I'm very thankful for this opportunity. So thank you, Bedros.
First off, you're welcome, Antonio. Secondly, you and Keller are awesome fucking human beings. And then thirdly, do you know how many people I offer the opportunity? I'm like, hey, if you want me on a podcast, instead of doing a Zoom, why don't we do it in person where we can transfer energy, be across from each other, really, really share space and do it in person. I said, I'll even loan out my video guys to do it. And 99% of the time, people are like, oh, you know what, man, I just can't travel. So you're one of the few that do travel. You're one of the few, but it's also no surprise. You're also an amazing entrepreneur, obviously a Marine. You just do things even though it might give you anxiety, it might freak you out, it might be inconvenience. And that's the difference between the yous and the thems. The yous are the winners and the thems are the losers of life.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the whole mission of this podcast, was to wake people up. And I felt like, what kind of example would I be setting the people that are following me and that inspire, reach out to me, they're inspired by the podcast. And I hit them up when this came and I was like, holy shit. And they were like, bro, you got to go. And I'm like, I know I got to go. There's no way I'm not going.
That's
but,
awesome, man.
Leading up to this was definitely, this is not my comfort zone, but I'm obviously comfortable with you.
Sure.
I look up to you. I'm entering a new decade. I just turned 40 this year.
Congratulations.
And I wanted to, thank you. And I wanted to have this as kind of be like Uncle B's, older brother kind of advice to me and my community. But I think like you could, the advice you have or the experiences you've been through are so valuable for people both young and old. And I know my community and those that are consuming my content can just take so much value from it. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do today. When I turned 40, I had a younger guy, he's about 27, and we did a podcast where I did that for him.
Yeah.
And so today I want that to be for me.
Right
and
on,
I look up to you as a friend, really, and I've been watching your content lately, and I really am seeing you level up. And really, it's kind of, when I hear other leaders in the space speak, I can kind of see through some things sometimes, and it's more often than not. And what you're saying is really incredible. And I think putting yourself out there like you did during COVID, the leadership you're giving the community, which is in this cancel culture, which you're really taking huge risks, and I know that from what I'm seeing. I really look up to you for that, and I'm excited to just dive into it with you today.
Well, let's do it, man. Holy shit, you really set the expectations high, so I'm going to do my best to meet them.
Slam dunk it, man.
Let's do it.
All right, so I wanted to start with family, and I wanted to get to learn a little bit more about you.
Sure.
And I wanted to know, you as a husband, as a father, and even as a son to your parents. I'm a father of 3 small children. Of course, I'm a husband to Kelly, and I know your wife, Diana. And I just wanted to, maybe you share some experience with this. What's the day-to-day, with running all this huge empire with your wife, and maybe some advice on, what's grown your relationship, and sometimes that maybe you did things that was
Sure.
detrimental to it.
Sure. So I think that's a great place to start. And if my wife, Diana, was sitting here, she'd probably have a different insight to give you. But I'm going to do my best to not just channel the rosy version that I see, but the version that probably her and my kids have experienced of me. And so, Antonio, with that, I'm going to break it down as Bedros 1.0 and 2.0. You've had the opportunity to meet Bedros 2.0 after I worked with Kevin Downing, the therapist, after I went through all my traumatic experiences and actually healed through it. But my wife married Bedros 1.0. I was 28 years old when her and I got married. And I was like, hey, I'm going to start these companies. I'm going to be rich and wealthy. I'm going to take my sister out of her day job. And because that's something I promised her when we came to this country when I was 8 years old. She hated one of the jobs that she worked at as a pizzeria waitress because the boss was just very handsy and whatever. And so I told her when I was a kid, I was like, one day I'm going to work so hard, I'm going to take you out of your job and you never have to work again. And today she gets paid to not work. And that's how I like it. But so my wife did marry Bedros 1.0 that was more knuckle dragging, that had more trauma, unresolved, and shielded and soothed, and showed up with ego. And so that guy was a bull in a china closet. And so my wife had to be very patient with me. So the first word that comes to mind is patience, both for my kids and my wife. As I had that massive panic attack at the age of 38 and went to a therapist to work with my anxiety attacks and panic situation, and really I just wanted him to give me some tools to work with my anxiety. I'm growing businesses, I'm dealing with the government and Federal Trade Commission and taxes and competition and marketing and ebbs and flow and economy. And that's all overwhelming, man, for an entrepreneur. And so, I would show up like a jerk to my wife and kids. And at some point, I think your subconscious mind says, hey, I'm going to punish you for it. And it punished me with this massive panic attack. Now, I'd felt anxiety before, and I'd felt stress, I'd felt overwhelmed, but I'd never actually had a panic attack. Heard people talk about it before, but I've never experienced one until the age of 38 on a Monday morning. And when I had that, it felt like I was having a heart attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I talk about it in my book, but long story short, that was the first domino that fell into the creation of Bedros 2.0, becoming the higher version of myself. People always look at success. See, at 48 years old, with a lot more gray in my beard and a lot more humility because I've been beat up and drugged down. And at 48 years old, I could admit that ego and trauma led me to prove myself to the world, no matter at what cost. And sometimes my wife and kids paid the cost of it. As I got to the other side of age 38 and I started working with a therapist to heal and figure out how to deal with my anxiety attacks and panic attacks, well, that therapist, Kevin, built such good rapport with me that he ended up really tapping into the trauma that took place in my life. I was molested by 2 older boys when I was a kid. That led to a lot of self-hate and shame, rage, confusion, chip on my shoulder. And so my wife got to see the healed version of me as Kevin worked with me for 15 months every week in overcoming that trauma, not feeling shame about it. I'd never sit here, the old me, talking about that I was molested by 2 older boys. Today, the man that shows up without armor to home. Like here, I'm armored up, I'm ready for battle, like I'm either on a call or a meeting or a Zoom or doing a podcast, half-day coaching. There are no breaks. Like Shelby will tell you, she brings my salad into my office. I'm on a coaching call. In between coaching calls, I'll be eating my chicken Caesar salad. There is no downtime for me. When I would show up to home before, the 1.0 version, I would show up with my armor on, as Kevin described it. Yeah. And of course, your wife, your kids, they're not looking for this battle-hardened, savage to come in and just browbeat everyone. Absolutely. Right? And so Kevin taught me that. He's like, dude, what if you could take your armor off? What if you can show up as a happy dad? What if you can show up as a dad that's accomplished his goals for the day, and now his new set of goals for the evening are to love and protect the wife and the children? I'm like, holy crap. So the new version of me is more present. The new version of me is more compassionate, more empathetic. The new version of me checks my text messages and all that before I ever walk into the house. I do it in the garage, or I stop at the gas station down the road, clear out my text messages and emails, turn off all notifications, and then go home. Now, my wife is not competing with my cell phone. Right. My kids aren't competing with my business. They have full attention, and it was so cool to see them come back to life again. Because I was starting to feel like I'm losing my family. Right. And what is success if you make millions of dollars and you're on the Inc. magazine, fastest growing franchises 3 years in a row, and Entrepreneur magazine's this, and all these bullshit awards? How successful am I if I feel like I'm losing my wife and kids and I'm losing my sanity? And that's where I was. And thank God I had that panic attack that allowed me to work with a therapist that helped me heal and become a more present, more aware, more just loving husband and father. And I think if you ask my wife and kids today and you injected them with truth serum, they would say there's 2 versions of him, the 1.0, which we never want to see again, and then the 2.0 that I do believe they love to pieces. Nice.
I think I'm liking like 1.5, bro.
Oh, that happens, yeah, bro. 1.6, yeah. 1.7.
So for me, journey. Like the journey, absolutely. Yeah. And like, I didn't set the appropriate boundaries with my membership base. It was very one relationship at a time, growing from a 1-car garage to a 6,000 square foot gym. As the community grows, that emotional impact on you grows from each person. Mm-hmm. You just can't maintain that. So for me, trying to set some boundaries, and it's taken a long time because they're used to the old Antonio, who was, oh yeah, everything's great, and then goes home and explodes on his family. Right. And then they text me like, hey, what's up? Yeah, that's awesome. You should be taking this protein, and that's great. In the middle of me like screaming, I'm texting this like awesome, happy text, and it's like, what a fucking hypocrite.
And doesn't that suck, dude?
Yeah. You're doing what you know technically is necessary at the time because you can't show that emotion to your member. But yeah, sorry to cut you off there.
No. You know, I came to this conclusion some time ago. I was like, dude, there's only one person in life that we choose, and that is our spouse. Like, you didn't choose your kids. I didn't choose my kids. Like, they were born to us, and I love Andrew and Chloe like you love your 3 kids. You know, you didn't choose your parents. You were born to them.
Right.
You didn't choose your siblings. You were born with them, right? The only one person that we choose is our spouse. And for most of us men that come from a place of trauma or a point to prove, or, you know, we just know we're meant for more, and we will just do whatever it takes to get there. Our spouses, our wives, end up being the catcher's mitt. And they catch all the shit that we throw. Like you said, like, you'll be going off at her, but then a client texts you like, hey, should I have grass-fed or regular way? And you're
organic, farm-fed.
Like, right. It's just, and so to be able to find that stability, that balance where I could show up to my wife like I show up to my best clients, I think is the greatest gift I can give myself and to my family.
Yeah. And I felt like the biggest thing I'm trying to do now, like I said, I'm not there yet at 2.0, is to control my emotion at home. Not just like, oh, don't be a bitch in front of your wife, but like when that explosion's about to happen, just be like, it's not going to do her any good.
Right.
You know, and it's coming from another place anyway. It's not about what just happened in front of you.
Yeah.
You're taking all this stuff that you're already pissed off about, and this is the thing you're going to explode on.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing it now in live action, and it's like, take a pause and slow it down.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness is such an amazing bridge to personal growth, man. The moment Kevin made it very clear how threatening I come across. He's like, you're a big dude. And one day I was just passionately leaning into him. Like, his office is like tiny, and I'm leaning in. I'm trying to explain to him why Diana's wrong, and my kids are wrong, and my employees are wrong. Everybody's wrong, and I'm right about da-da-da-da-da. And I'm leaning in. And, you know, he's got those typical chairs like therapists do, and he's leaning back as much as the spring will handle, and he's in the closed off position here, tucked in, got his arteries tucked. Like, everything about his body language is do not kill me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it. He goes, hey, Bedros. I go, yeah, Kevin. He goes, do you realize how threatening you're coming off right now? I was like, oh, shit. And I just kind of self-awareness hit, and I was like, oh, my God, dude, I'm so sorry. And he goes, imagine how you come across to your wife and kids that way, who are helpless. I was like, oh, my God, dude. And that moment of self-awareness was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Absolutely embarrassing. Because here I am in that moment explaining to him why everyone's wrong and I'm right. When in reality, I was wrong, and they are right, but I just never see it that way.
And it's kind of like that bulldozing. That's the term I use for it. 'Cause I'm like, man, I just bulldozed the whole kitchen.
Yeah.
My kids took it, my wife took it,
Yeah.
and it's because of that little jerk at the gym. You know,
Right.
It had nothing to do with my family.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely something I'm working on, and I can look up to you as inspiration for that to get to that next level.
Thanks, man.
I definitely have gotten better at it. But like I said, the rawness in Man Up was just so powerful for you to just tell the true story of your struggles.
Yeah.
And in this world, like we said, we talked about before this, oh, he just got lucky, or, you know, it's just such bullshit. And I mean, for anyone to read your book and not see how genuine you are, because I think that takes the highest form of man to speak about their failures, their weaknesses, their fears. There's different types of men. Like my father was strong, silent type. And my mom, I'm the youngest of 6, so I guess I'm from an Italian family, so I'm always I gotta be loud to be heard,
right.
or even hurt, like I'll survive probably. I was like, can I get some food? But she said, well, you were never the strong, silent type, and I was like, you know, but then I'm like, you know, the strong, silent type only helps within arm's distance.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe I'm not, but maybe I'm helping many more people because I'm not the strong, silent type.
Yeah. There's strength in everything is what I found.
Yeah.
And I may not like. People will be on the phone, bro, trying to describe to me like how a website's going to look or how the new build out of Fit Body Boot Camps are going to look. And I'm like, listen, man, I don't get it. He's like, how do you not get like gray and silver flooring? I'm like, I can't picture it. My brain doesn't work that way.
Right.
But man, if you're in front of me and you're showing me visuals, I can get it. I could see it in like Technicolor, multicolor, and I get it. So, but I have a weakness there. I have a poor imagination. If you're like, Bedros, imagine this. I'm just imagining like a blank slate.
Right.
I'm not seeing what you're seeing, bro.
Right.
But if you're there with like a PowerPoint slide and you've got some like graphical demonstrations of what, I could see it and then I could add to it. And so strong and silent type, that's a superpower. And then the chatty, like I'm gonna be seen and heard because I need to get what I want. That's a superpower if we know how to use it. Yeah, exactly. Because it does create vulnerability. Right. And when there's vulnerability, people are drawn to someone that's vulnerable because they sense trust. And trust is a very major magnet to be able to create impact.
Yeah.
You know?
We just released, I did a State of the Union address with my whole membership base. We had members who've been with us for years on these long-term discounts. And when someone tried to buy our business out this year, and we had to take a hard look at our business, and I was like, man, I gotta clean this, I gotta clean this up. And so they were like, oh, write a professional letter. And I'm like, they're gonna see right through that. This is Antonio, the guy grew up in the hood, in the warehouse in the hood, and like played loud curse word music and did whatever he want. That's the brand. Yeah. And if we send this corporate letter, that's not gonna work. So I was like, I gotta shoot a video, and I gotta keep it real with them and be 100% transparent. And then when I got to the point where I was gonna talk about the build up to that moment of making this video, I just got emotional. I was like, it's been hard to do this. And I started crying. Yeah. And then I was like, this is 200 people. And I'm like, I'm not ashamed to cry in front of you. And I'm not going to reshoot this because that's how much this brand means to me. Sure. And how much you mean to me. And I understand financial, struggles. And it pains me to do this for you. And so I feel like that it's whoever goes forward with us, we now have a blood in, blood out tribe. Yeah. And my parents don't understand that. My family who are engineers, they don't understand that. That side. And I link towards you because I know you come from some darkness. And I love that quote where you said your wife said you were the Pied Piper of broken men. And I was like, oh, it's one of me. That's who I am. But we just keep going. And so that's why I'm drawn to you for sure. I wanted to talk a little bit about you as a father to your two children. And obviously we've already talked about what not to do. Where have you found success and some advice you could give? Because I think a lot of people struggle, either they're not having children, a lot of people that are couples that are parents or not parents, they're going through a lot right now.
Yeah. Well, for me, I found, thankfully, I think that's one thing I know I did right, and I know my wife and I did right together, because now our kids, one's 17, one's about to turn 15. In a week, Chloe's about to turn 15, Andrew's 17, he's got his driver's license. Yeah. And I say this because my dad was 45 years old when he had me. And I remember thinking dude, I appreciate you bringing me to the country, to the United States. But I grew up here, never played ball. I saw my friends and their dads playing ball or whatever. So he was older when he had me. But now that I think about it, I'm 48. I'm in pretty good shape. Yeah. My dad was 45, 46 when he had me. He just, fitness wasn't a thing, especially when you're coming from a communist country. They ate whatever they want. They drank a lot of vodka and they went out and tried to make money in a new country. He was stressed out in his own right. He's trying to learn the language and get his bearings. And so I was kind of left to, figure things out. And of course that got me into a lot of trouble with the law and carjackings and home invasion robberies. And that all led ultimately to a police helicopter chase where you can't outrun a police helicopter with a 79 Toyota pickup. Lesson learned. But I share this with you because I was like, I'm going to do the opposite that my dad did. I'm going to keep myself in awesome shape. I'm going to have my kids when I'm younger. So we had Andrew when I was 30, Chloe when I was 32. And I was like, I'm going to be fully involved with them. So even when I was in my 1.0 stage of being a jerk and an asshole, I would always make time to take Andrew to a gym with me. I'm in the fitness industry, so I had friends who own gyms because the big box gyms won't let a kid come in. So I still have little pictures of Andrew at 4 or 5 years old with 2-pound dumbbells benching next to me as I'm doing 105s, right? And he remembers that. And today, we work out together in the evenings. Chloe goes to the gym with us. We do family workouts. Took him out surfing because I was like, I want to learn to surf. Everything that I wanted to do. So me and my son play ping pong. Me and my daughter go on dates together. We do the one wheel, which is pretty much like a surfboard on land with this motorized wheel. And I do all these things, and I never limit myself by age because I try and stay as fit and as athletic and as positive-minded as possible because I know that my son and my daughter see me as their best friend because they have a choice now as a teenager to hang out with me at night or to go to the gym with me or not. And hey, Dad, we going to the gym? What are we training today? What are we crushing? I'm like, son, we're bringing it because Dad had a hard day. He's like, all right, Dad. And I'll peel off my shirt halfway through the set when I got a good pump, and I'll see he peels off his shirt. Yeah, and I'll start grunting, and he'll start grunting. It's like, all right, well, I'm using 10 times your weight, son, but you'll catch up, right? And so we start playing those games. But it's so cool, man, because I got them involved early on. Started dating Chloe, going out on dates with Chloe. And my whole thing with Chloe was I was like, I'm going to brainwash her where she knows what the expectation should be from a boy. So she was probably 6, 7 years old. I take her on a little date. She goes, is this what you and Mom do when you guys go on dates? I'm like, yeah, we sit in the car and we go somewhere. And right now, you and I are going to Chick-fil-A. She goes, what else do you guys do in the car? I go, well, we hold hands. She reaches across and holds my hand, bro. And I almost started falling apart when she did that. And I'm just like, right, driving the car to Chick-fil-A while my tiny little daughter is holding my hand. I was like, Chloe, just so you know how daddy opened your door for you and you got in? Yeah. When you have a friend who's a boy in the future and he doesn't open your door, you don't have to be friends with him. Like, boys have to open your door for you. They have to honor and respect you, and they have to see you, and they have to be very aware of what your needs are. You get that, right? Yeah. And you see how mommy's very respectful towards me because we have our roles. Yeah. And so these dates over years, bro, I was able to impart this message. Yeah, till today, we go on dates. Recently, I lost $300 on one of our dates. We went to Raw Sushi. It's got these red balls hanging from, like, lights that are hanging from the ceiling. I was like, Chloe, you have 3 seconds to count them, and then if you were within 5, then I'm going to give you whatever, $300. And then she nailed it within 2, right? So anyway, I share this with you because those dates, the workouts, the surf sessions, the hikes together, pool time. And I can't tell you how many times I wanted to say, because I'm tired.
Yeah,
because I'm tired. Because, bro, you come home tired. You're exhausted. The world and your clients and your employees, like, you want to love them all up. And then you realize I have no energy to give to anyone else. But instead, I always chose to say, let's do it.
Right.
So I worked out and surfed and one-wheeled and ping-ponged and went on dates, tired and exhausted. And today I get to reap the benefits of that with 2 amazing, wonderful kids who are just looking to serve humanity in a way that I'll never be able to serve because they're started off so young.
Sure, yeah. That's like amazing testimony. And again, I was telling Kelly when we came out last year to sit with you, and I was like, man, I have a lot in common with Bedros when we were kicking it. And like, I'm the youngest of 6, and my dad was in his 50s when he had me. And I'm like, 6 children. I'm sure he probably never even was like, I don't even know who that kid is.
Right.
You know. And so
whose son is this?
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
So like, I don't remember anything like football throws or anything like that. And I didn't know how to fight. And that led me to a path, like, because he was a man from the old days.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, they were fighting with knives and shit back then. They fought the KKK with knives, like, he was crazy.
Jeez.
Old Italians. But so like I had to figure my own life out, and of course I became a follower.
Yeah.
And I went down the wrong road, and that led me to years and years and years of trying to find myself, which took me till I was 30 to even like get my feet settled. You know, it took me that long to recover from all the damage I did as a youth.
Yeah.
And so now, like, I had this vision of what kind of father I wanted to be. And then I get into, I'm running a business, and like the father I was being was not what old Antonio saw as himself as a father. And I'm like barking at him, and I'm snapping, and I'm just like, what kind of father are you? You know what I mean? You're a good father. You're present when you're present, and you you play with them and have catches with them. But like, so I've been really working on that a lot. And I heard once, like, if your kids ask you to do something at that age, just do it.
Just do it.
Just take away the like figuring it out. Just be like, hey, you want to color? And you're like, fuck. No, I don't want to color. Like, all right, we're going to color.
Bro, I faked my way through more board games. I had no idea. And I'm like, Chloe, explain the rules. And
There's some cheating fools, though. They cheat like...
Oh, yeah. Oh, kids, fucking, first of all, they cheat massively. Second, again, one of my gifts is to not understand complicated board games. And so I'm like, okay, I got it. And so so we'll all sit on the ground. My wife, Diana, I call her Di, like, she'll like nudge me. She's like, dude, you can't make that move with your guy. I'm like, they didn't see, and it doesn't matter because they're having a good time, and Chloe just farted anyway, right? And like, that's what we're gonna remember is Chloe farted when we were in close proximity. We're not gonna remember the 5 moves that I had to cheat to understand the game, right?
That I just won Candyland.
Exactly, man. But I can't tell you how many times I've had to say yes, or I instinctively knew I'm going to say yes and I'm going to figure it out. Like the one wheel, I had no business getting on a one wheel 2 years ago. This thing is the most dangerous, reckless machine. It can go 20 miles per hour on one go-kart wheel. Do you know what a one wheel is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I've never been on one, but
bro. But Andrew's
I'm
like,
visualizing you right now flying down the Chino Hills.
Let me tell you, Andrew's like, Dad, I got one, and I think you should get one too. I'm like, will we ride it together? He's like, yeah. I'm online ordering the One Wheel GT, their flagship model. It comes here. I'm like, all right, man, here we go. And like, I was like rolling down the driveway, and I've like popped my knee a few times. I've torn meniscus, bruised my bone and the bone marrow because one of the times, you got to run it out like when you fall. And Leighton knows that because Leighton's a great skater. Well, I failed to run it out because I was trying to run it out downhill. And when you're 225 pounds of awesomeness, you got a lot of momentum like a freight train going downhill. Bro, this thing went pop because my knee hyperextended. And I'm just like, Dad, are you okay? And I'm just like wanting to cry and pass out. I'm like, I'm okay, son, I'm fine. But I'm spending time with my son on a
yeah.
weekend doing crazy shit. What a great memory he's going to
Yeah.
have. And then he's going to pass along to his kids, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking to someone before, and they were like, well, did your dad play with you? And I was like, no. And they were like, well, do you think his dad played with him? And I was like, holy crap, I've never thought of that. I think I even got emotional when I heard that. And I was like, man, he probably never did.
I mean, your dad's generation, he comes from a generation where, like, their parents were just like, hey, you're supposed to be
straight off.
seen.
Well, they were straight off the boat.
Yeah,
So.
you're supposed to be seen and not heard.
Oh yeah, extreme discipline. But the good thing and the value of that is like respect for your elders, which I don't know if that's even taught anymore. Like I went on a run today, and there were some things going through my head, and that was one of them. Just like absolute. I was thinking about kind of sitting across from you, and I'm like, I respect him as an elder. You know, like he's an elder, and he deserves my respect. Let alone the fact that you've already gained it. You know, you've done both. And so I was like, but that's not out there. You know, like not to talk about my wife's family, or there's families that I've gotten included with. I can see it from a mile away. I'm like, they don't respect they don't respect elders.
Yeah.
They respect authority. We just learned that with COVID, but they don't respect elders.
Oof.
You know,
There's a big difference there, man.
There's a huge difference.
Elders, as I've found as I've gotten older, have gained wisdom. Wisdom that you will not learn in college, you will not learn in any school. It is through experience, and it is through like the trenches. And then for them, if you just pay attention to them and respect them, they might impart a story that gives you an edge. Yeah. One thing that I heard from an elder was that in life we have two chances at a parent-child relationship. The first is when you're the child. The second is when you're the parent. When I heard that from an elder, and only if someone older, way older than me, could say that because they had a shitty childhood with their parents, but they chose to, when they had kids, be a better parent, be more present. And he told me, it was my old mentor, he told me, he said that hole in my heart was finally fulfilled when I was able to do with my daughter and my son what my parents, what my mom and dad weren't able to do with me. Now you could either hold that chip on your shoulder, or I could take that lesson from a wise older man and be like, you know what, I can't wait to have Andrew and Chloe, because when I do, I'm going to fulfill all those needs that I needed as a kid.
Right.
Like, I'm grateful, man. They brought me to the United States. We escaped communism. We had a food.
Takes
we had
a certain type of person to be able to do
holy
that. Right.
crap.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there was a lot of like gaps that were missing, like that could have been fulfilled by a present dad, right? And so, but I was like, I'm going to be that present dad. And then doing for Andrew, doing for Chloe also fulfilled that need for me. Like, what a cool piece of wisdom that was imparted to me by someone older than me that I respected. Yeah.
And also making that better life for your children, just like in the old days. Like you said, you could have a chip on your shoulder because daddy didn't love you. Well, like there's been a lot of atrocities in the world. Like people don't even have, this discussion wasn't even available.
Right.
You know, like, so, you know, but there's something really special. Like I've struggled a lot in business, and I'm very honest about it. And my barber's Italian guy, he's younger than me, and we talk about it a lot. He has 4 children, and I'm just like, no, that's what we're doing. We're creating a better life for our children, and we got to suck it up. And that's gold.
Yeah.
And my dad wasn't able to do that because he didn't have probably the money, or he had a million things going on. And I learned so much from him just from his example, because he was an outlaw. So like one day he just would, more than one day, he would walk out across the house with a stop sign on his shoulder, and he'd throw it in the woods. And his theory was that corner doesn't need a stop sign. And so like you start seeing that, and like it starts to impart on you.
Yeah.
And that rebel has created the powerful man who could get this business through the things I had to get it through, and get through the Marine Corps. It was just like, yeah, there's rules, but there's also our elders' wisdom and experience to make a decision on what authority we're going to actually follow.
Like, I respect that. Like that there, what you said, I can literally think of a particular stop sign that needs to be removed. And I'm going to be very honest, I just run it.
Yeah.
I run it.
And my kids see it.
Yeah.
And they're like, that was a red light. I'm like, correct, however.
Exactly. And one time I went into, California, we have a lot of carpool lanes. And I just went right into the carpool lane. Like, Dad, you can't do that. It's double yellow. I go, it's just paint.
It's just paint. It's a
just
suggestion.
Paint. Yeah. It's just paint. And
they could also tell you to stand here, and then a tank runs over you.
Right.
What's the right decision?
What is the right decision?
When I was in the Marine Corps, I'm like, I'm going out. It's not going to be some stupid hick driving backwards over me over a tank because he didn't see me. That's not a legacy I want to leave in this world.
Right.
So no, I'm not going to stand over there unless I feel it's safe to stand over there.
Yeah.
You know?
And sometimes it does help using just common sense, which goes back to common sense, because whether they're lawmakers or whoever, and we saw a lot of this in 2020, and I don't want to make this a political
Sure, that's why I've been
thing,
trying to.
Right? But, there was a lot of stupid mandates and laws and suggestions that were passed. It's like, I'm not going to wear a double mask by myself in my car. And then you would hear about people like passing out because they weren't getting enough oxygen in, and they were getting too much CO2 going, and they're passing out while they're driving. It's like, isn't that common sense? If you're getting lightheaded, you're not taking off your fucking mask because some mandate told you that you live in a state where your neighboring state may very well, people are allowed to drive with no masks on. You're being told to wear 2 masks and drive by yourself with your windows rolled up and you're passing out, yet you don't feel you can take off your mask. Like, what does the matter with you?
Something wrong there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was hard to handle what I saw happen to this country as a veteran. It was just,
I'm sure.
And my family would get on a family Zoom call, and you know how the fitness business was.
Yeah.
We were getting stomped. And I was just like, I cannot do this Zoom call. Like, I am in war right now. And if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's totally fine. But I can't just sit here and just, you know, to hear this. It's just madness, you know. And it was definitely a frustrating period. And we actually followed your protocol with how to reopen and everything like that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I got to tell you, bro, like men like you, my wife always says this. She goes, men like you are an endangered species. And I'm going to tell you right now, men like you are an endangered species because people don't feel like, why do we need to learn to hunt now? There's food in grocery stores. Why do we need? You say that now, but when there's a crash outside, who's going to jump out and help? It's going to be men like you. You say that now, but when food shortages started to happen and people were panicking, who's going to be able to keep peace? Hell, I was around during the LA riots. I was in my late teens, 17, 18, 19 years old. And when Daryl Gates, the chief of police in LA, told the police to stand down because, you know what, they want to burn down LA, let them burn down LA, stand down. For 3 days, and even the fire department couldn't go out because these looters were shooting at firefighters who were trying to put out the fires, so fire department stopped going out. So all of LA's on fire, just 25 minutes away from us here. Me and my friends were curious, so we drive down and we're like, oh shit, look at that. It's all men standing on top of their buildings, from the Koreans to the white folk to the black folk to the Mexican folk. They own businesses in these little towns, and they're up there with their guns and their rifles defending their buildings. And those were the only ones, even ones that said black owned on the glass. Some of those were burnt down because people didn't give a shit. Or like, does fire give a shit? Okay, you lit the white owned building on fire that's touching the black owned building, so it's going to read the sign. Fire doesn't give a shit, right? But the dude up there with the rifle who's standing in the gap between good and evil, he kept his business going. And I have a lot of respect for that. So while how we live, how we operate, you're right. Because I was like, we're at war.
Right.
We're at war.
Absolutely.
And we're doing this whole Zoom thing and mask thing.
I thought it was like the biggest attack we've ever been through. Because it just broke our code.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And to me, it's like, we're talking about the level of alcohol in this little pump versus the war that we're fighting of our freedom and how it's being eroded.
And mental health.
And mental health.
It's going to take years and years and years before they even realize the impact of it.
Dude, I'm telling you, you're an endangered species, but we're still massively needed because without us, we're only one generation away from losing the one great country left on this planet that still has freedom, that still has opportunity, and has the highest level of equality for its citizens. It's not perfect, but it has the highest level of equality for its citizens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, we've always spoken that in our brand's legacy, like about patriotism. We do Memorial Day Murph workout. We just flew out William from Naked Warrior, and he did the guest of honor speech. And the whole point of it is to make it bigger and bigger every year, just to remind people of patriotism.
Perfect.
And of course, we're balancing that fine act of like bipartisanship and everything with your membership, but it's like a fine line, and just like, you know what, it doesn't matter our political view. What matters is we stay true to our core values. And then finally, as a son of your parents, now that you're older, they're older, I know a lot of people that, you know, in my community, their parents are starting to ail. I lost my father. And now it's my mother's alone, and it's like trying to figure that out. It's the youngest. There's always the guilt of not being there enough. Yeah. What have you learned as your parents have grown older and as you've grown older with them?
Man, I've learned a lot, man, because I'm the baby of the family. So when I was 6 years old when we came to this country, my brother was 19, my sister was 21. So I'm the oops baby. Like, I'm 14 years younger than my next closest sibling. And so knowing that, I always knew in the back of my head, like, it's going to be up to me taking care of everybody. Like, I'm the one that's going to be there at everyone's funerals. That's just a reality, right? It's just a reality. And so now my dad is 88 years old. My mom is 84 years old. My mom's got dementia, Alzheimer's. My dad recently had a stroke because he chose to not take his medication because he didn't want to see his wife that way. And of course that led to a stroke. Now we got him back on his meds. But I share all this because I've learned a lot of things. as parents, we don't need to put that burden on our kids. We can truly live in a way where we get old and old and old and old and stay functional, and then one day go to sleep and not wake up. That's how we're supposed to die. But if we don't work out, we don't eat right, we don't maintain a positive mental attitude, we continue to use alcohol and drugs, we continue to stay inactive, we continue to increase insulin, we lack sleep and think that I'll sleep when I'm dead. I used to be that guy thinking I'm sleep when I'm dead. All those things.
Not cool anymore.
Yeah, like I don't want to be a burden on my kids with having dementia and strokes and crippled, et cetera. So I'm active, I'm mobile, I'm flexible, and I plan on being this way. I plan on working out on a Sunday one day. It'll be a Sunday, it'll be leg days. I'll walk to my truck, I'll get in my truck, and I'll fall asleep and I'll die. That's how I plan on dying, on a leg day, on a Sunday. That's
Leg day.
like, I've got it, it's already in here, and I'm
there.
putting it out in the
Leg
universe.
day feels like that sometimes.
It does. And people are like,
Close calls.
people are like, why would you fall asleep? I'm like, on leg days, I always fall asleep in my truck because I've just given it all I got and my blood sugar's low because I trained in a fasted state. But anyways, I share this with you because I love my parents to pieces, but because I knew that that burden was going to be on me, like I was self-aware enough to know that I'm the youngest, that burden's going to be on me. I have the greatest amount of opportunity to maximize what America has to offer. I was hell-bent on creating a lot of wealth for myself for this very day. And today, my parents aren't in a assisted living home. They are living in their own house with a full-time live-in nurse who's Armenian, speaks the language, comes from the same village that they do. I pay that person an obscene amount of money, and I'm not even going to talk about how much I pay that person, but I do, and I tell my brother and my sister, don't worry about it. Like that's my gift and my burden at the same time. Because I don't see them as often as I'd like to. They're only 30 minutes away, and I don't see them as often as I'd like to. For me to be able to make the kind of money that's necessary to run the machines that we have in terms of the companies and the brands and the businesses, and then to be able to make sure there's always a driver available for my mom and dad, and make sure that live-in nurse is available. Well, I may not see them as frequently, but when I do, it's very meaningful.
Yeah.
But so it's my gift and my burden, and I enjoy it. But man, it could have been very different had my parents lived an active life, a life where they ate well, managed their carbohydrate intake, maintained, controlled their insulin, got more sleep, didn't smoke and drink as much, maintained a positive mental attitude. The Armenian culture, especially that I come from, and I am predisposed to this, we will find the most negative thing and we will hang on to it, bro. Very much similar to the Italians, actually. Yeah.
Or Irish. I don't know which ones.
Yeah.
I'm Irish and Italian. And
okay.
both like,
you might have both, yeah.
I think I have both.
Yeah. And I think cultures that have seen a lot of oppression tend to want to stay oppressed. And so you can be like, hey, here's a dozen wonderful things that are going to happen today, but here's one thing that's just going to be a pain in the ass. There's going to be traffic on the 71. And they will ignore the dozen wonderful things that happen, and they will go tell everyone about the traffic on the Highway 71. Yeah. And so I'm predisposed to that. So I've taken the effort every morning to fight it and to go into a positive mental attitude, sending out 3 gratitude text messages every morning to 3 people that I love and appreciate and I'm grateful for turning on Pandora, Jack Johnson, because Jack Johnson makes me happy when he plays the guitar and he sings about banana pancakes. And then to drink 30 ounces of water because I know I need that, and to open up the windows and stand in front of it because I need sunlight. I will do everything I can to shift my attitude from bitterness and pessimism to optimism and enthusiasm, because if I can do that, then I can serve the world well. And if I don't do that, then I will just go down this rabbit hole of misery. Yeah. And so I serve my mom and dad the best I can, but I also see them as a cautionary tale in how to live so that I'm not a burden on my children.
Yeah. And it's such an amazing gift to give them too, because like I know when you had an infant in your hands, I don't know, did you think about your parents when you were in their arms?
I did.
Kind of like, oh, okay.
You almost want to go back and apologize, right?
Yeah.
Like,
sorry
I'm sorry for the blowout. Yeah. I probably
so
pooped on you.
Right.
I didn't let you sleep at night. Yeah.
It wasn't stuff I did in my teenage years.
Isn't that funny how that happens? It's like, I really do believe that we become grown-ups when we have kids, not so much when we're 18.
No, not at all.
Because that's when you become most selfless, is when you have kids. Like, I remember the first time Chloe had this, like, she was probably, 7 months old. She would sleep through the night. Andrew wouldn't. Chloe would. But I'd set my alarm to wake up at 6 a.m. And then it's like 2 in the morning and I hear this screeching. It's Chloe. I run across the hallway and she's like thrown up and had a blowout, bro.
Oh, nice.
6 months old. And I'm trying to love her and console her and stop her from crying. Also clean up the sheets and the carpet. Yeah, all while making sure Di doesn't wake up because like Di's job is to breastfeed her because I don't have breasts, so I got to do this. But yet I didn't plan on waking up at 2 in the morning.
It's always that hour when like nothing, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is it, man.
Yeah.
This is the battlefield.
This is the battlefield,
This is the
exactly.
new
You're swinging at the
battlefield.
fences trying to figure out what happened, and you realize it's your baby crying down the hallway. But that is a whole new level of selflessness, man, because the only other thing that would wake me up before we had kids is the occasional earthquake in California. It's like, oh, did you hear that? Yeah, it was an earthquake. All right, go back to bed.
Yeah.
No, it's like as a parent.
Something, you hear something, it's something.
Yeah.
You got to get moving. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. So it's really, adulthood is when you have children and you learn how insignificant your needs are compared to that baby's needs.
And it's such a huge problem, not a problem that you have to figure out. You know,
Yeah.
someone said like when you have kids, you're starting to die, or like it's like your death has begun or something. And there's truth to it when you think about it deeply. But then it's like, but no. And then some are like, well, just live for your kids. And you're like, what about you? Some people just live for themselves. So it's like that's I think the biggest struggle people have.
Agreed.
Some do it really wrongly, and some search deeply within themselves to figure out the best way to fight it, because it's a journey and a battle to learn how to do it best. And I think that falls in line with everything you just said.
It's a weird thing, man. How crazy is it that like you can go buy a pet puppy and they'll be like, all right, here's the feeding scenario. Here's how you want to feed them. And then you want to give them fish oil. And here's like, this dog is part German Shepherd. So here's some powder you're going to put in their food to help them with their hips, because German Shepherds have bad hips. And no, by the way, you're going to want to play catch with them 10, 12 times a day to get all that energy out. No, they're going to need a routine, because if they don't have a routine, they're going to start getting stressed and anxious and depressed. It's almost like you can buy an animal, a goldfish, and it comes with some kind of an owner's manual. Yet 2 people walk into a hospital, 3 walk out like 24 hours later. And I remember looking at my wife like, no cops are going to stop us right now? And is there an owner's manual for that little dude? Because there isn't.
No.
There isn't. And you're just supposed to figure it out. But that's what growing up is, like figuring it out, solving problems, like you said. And if we can solve enough problems in our life, we can begin to live a life of like design. That's really what it is. A lifestyle that you want to design is all based on the problems that you're willing to solve versus most people who are willing to ignore the problems. I'll just ignore it and it'll go away, which we know never goes away, just amplifies.
And that's such a deeper topic. And I just wanted to touch on the children.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people in our gym community that are just having babies, and I'm just like, look, we're here to help in any way we can. Sometimes we babysit them for them. But I always tell them, look, no one knows how to do this. You're going to figure it out. Then I would give them one tip of advice is curl your toe over the step so you don't trip and fall down the step. Double confirm, then step when you have the infant. But that's it. I'm like, the rest you're going to figure it out, because every baby's different, and good luck. It's going to be chaos, but you'll get it done because that's what people do.
Ain't that the truth, man?
I wanted to go into faith, because faith has been a huge driver for me in my life. And I know it's a big part of what you do with the project and with the men. You're changing their lives and their families' lives, which is amazing work. How has faith worked for you, and kind of how do you, not necessarily define it, but how have you seen that it's worked for you in your past?
Yeah, so I think, to me, I think there's 2 levels of faith. Faith as in a higher power,
and then faith
right? And then faith as in
jumping into the unknown.
Jumping into the unknown. And we're always more likely to jump into the unknown if we have a higher level of faith, and you can just replace that word faith with confidence, right? When we are more confident, we have a higher level of faith in ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that level of faith allows us to jump into the unknown,
Figure it out.
to figure it out. Most people are waiting on the edge to figure it out. To how deep is it? How dark is it? How cold is it? How long is it?
The opportunity's gone.
Opportunity's gone. Like the unknown, the beauty of life is in the unknown. And so jump in and FIO, figure it out as you go. And so I found that the more confident I've become, the higher my faith in myself and my team has been. Like, I know we can figure anything out. After surviving, I wouldn't say we thrived, but we survived through COVID. I knew that I had even greater levels of faith in my leadership, confidence in my leadership, because I'll be honest, man, like there was a big stretch of great years. Pre-COVID, there was a good stretch of like 10 years of just like awesomeness. The economy's thriving, like everything's awesome. Social media is blowing up. So you got all these different platforms. So I'm like, in the back of my mind, I did wonder, Antonio, like, am I an accidental success? Do I just have a rabbit foot up my ass because I start a supplement company, a franchise, a coaching business, and all these things? I write a book and that takes off. Maybe I was just lucky. And then COVID happens, and there is no master's program, MBA, PhD, Harvard, Yale. No one teaches how to survive and thrive out of a COVID,
But
pandemic.
everyone's judging you from their house while they're getting paid.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, holy shit, I am a gangster after all.
Yeah.
Like that was a true acid test. Like, do you have what it takes?
Mojo times 1,000.
Yeah, man. And so faith to me is confidence in self, and confidence is a byproduct of just getting up and doing it, like keeping a promise to yourself. Because when you keep a promise to yourself, you build a higher level of reputation with yourself. Like, for example, if you're like, hey, Bedros, I'm going to be down here at 3:30, and I never show up. Mm-hmm. And you're like, what the hell? You're like, I've lost confidence in Bedros, right? And of course, if I don't show up, I start subconsciously losing confidence in myself. Now, I might justify it, well, I was sick, and then sure. I'm sure Joan will tell Antonio, blah, 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 or I had this, I had that. At the end of the day, I lose confidence in myself. You lose confidence in me. If you don't trust me and my subconscious mind doesn't trust me, the next opportunity I get, I'm going to hesitate. And hesitation is devastation. And so I'm going to be in a place where I'm going to see an opportunity. I'm not going to ask how deep is it, how long is it, how cold is it, how hot is it. I'm going to jump into it and then FIO, figure it out, because I know that I'm capable. I have everything. I have 2 arms, 2 legs, a decent brain, some common sense. I can figure most things out. And if I can't, I've left my ego aside where I'd be like, bro, can you help me? I'm drowning here.
Right.
You got any ways I can swim out of this shithole? So to me, that's personal faith.
And that's so deep, like what you just said about how when you cheat yourself from your cause, how you start to die a little.
Yeah.
Your self-esteem dies a little, and like you're just really giving into the worst form of you. And that's just going to that can become overpowering to where you're done. Yeah. You're never going to make it. And you're going to be that good person that has regret and that's talking about bitching at everybody. Yep. And like. That's kind of the overall, it's such a deep topic. I'm like, don't go down that road because you're going to get confused, forget what you're talking about. But it's like, that's what people need to really start thinking about, because I think everything else falls in line with that. Yeah. Like with the project, you're giving them confidence so that they can take jumps, they can take faith. And then you're healing them in other ways, which I want to step into next, which is getting them back to their self. And it's because they broke all their rules that this is the new them. Yeah. And they can either die miserable or shoot themselves, or they can start to begin the work to fix that. And that's a scary thing when it's something as simple as showing up to an interview, but you know the power of it, and I know the power. And it was funny because I was doing the email to your team today. I'm like, what if they just said, he's like, what if Bedros said he got sick? And I'm like, he's copping out. And then I'm like, but I've done it. And I'm like, he wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't even care because I like you. And I'm like, I'll go around your headquarters. But it was funny, I had that thought, like, what if he copped out? You know what I mean? And I flew out here and I'm like, oh, fuck it. You know what I mean? Because you've done so much, it wouldn't even matter to me. But I can be honest and say that's the kind of stuff I'm doing and have done in the past that's chipping away at the core of who Antonio is that I need to get back to. And I did it because people took away my confidence. I got through COVID and I was a fire starter. I was out in parking lots shooting videos of myself. I was going crazy. I had plans and the whole plan got shut down because the equipment retailer was like not going to jump. Like, all right, we're going right over to this. We were jumping through every hoop we could with that rebel attitude. But then after that, some things happened in business that really checked my confidence and the respect of people around me and my team and me. And that took a big hit out of me. And so now, like I said, I'm at 1.5. That's the self-work I need to do. And that's showing up for all the stuff that's uncomfortable and for all the things you don't want to do and you're being a bitch about and you're not showing discipline in. Those are the things that can either set the next 10 years of this decade of my life correctly, or I'm in trouble. Exactly right. And I think everyone we're talking to, and you strive to inspire people. We don't do it as a gimmick. It's because you're lonely and you want to. You're like, I don't agree with the way things are. And I think that's the base of being an entrepreneur is that's not correct. It could be a lot better. This country could be 1,000,000 times better, and we can do it. And what is it going to take for us to wake you up to start jumping into the fight?
And it is the entrepreneurs who consistently and continuously make quality of life better. I mean, you look at Uber, right? They didn't even start off as what they were, but they pivoted into becoming the Uber in terms of average people renting out their cars and driving you around instead of a cab. And then someone got the idea and looked at Uber and said, well, why do people have to go to a restaurant? Pizza parlors deliver, but no one else delivers. What if we use some of these Uber drivers to actually start delivering food? And then, of course, Postmate and Grubhub and all these different food delivery services. And then each started bettering the other. And because of that, the quality of life of us as a whole improves. And going back to confidence for a moment again, people think, well, all right, so what the message I got here from Antonio and Bedros is don't bitch out on a big promise, right? And I'm here to tell you that even on something tiny, it's the same negative effect. And the example I use in my book is, the night before you make a promise to yourself, before you go to bed, you go, all right, I'm gonna, like me, I wake up at 5:30. So I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. Now, if in the morning, when my alarm goes off, I hit that snooze button, I have stacked an L, a loss, instead of a W. And if my first thing that I've stacked, now I could justify it every which way. Like, I didn't sleep well, Diana was tossing and turning all night, and she kicked me twice, and so I was up all night. Now I got to finally sleep, or it was cold, or I was having nightmares.
The baby shit and puked everywhere.
A baby shit and puked everywhere. I could lie to myself all I want why I deserve that extra 20 minutes of sleep. However, the subconscious mind knows the truth. You just got an L, my friend, because you made a promise the night before, and now you broke that promise. You have eroded your reputation with yourself. You are less trustworthy. You are more of an imposter, more of a hypocrite than ever. And then you're more likely to stack another L instead of a W, and another L. And then you see, man, why did my day go to shit today? Well, you hit the snooze button. So the little promises that we make to ourselves and to others, when we break those, we begin to erode our reputation with ourselves, which then begins to erode our confidence and our trust. And all those things are the determining factors, whether you're stacking a lot of W's or stacking a lot of L's. And all of life is about, if I could stack more W's day after day after day, those days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years. And now I've got a decade of W's for the most part. And I've got a good life, versus the guy that just says, well, I'm going to accept mediocrity. I'm going to be proud of being average. And before you know it, they've been stacking L's for a decade. And then it's like, bro, what do you do? It's like, well, I'm 40 years old and I still drive a shuttle bus at the local Hilton. Nothing wrong with that guy.
Sure.
But deep down inside.
Is that what he's called to do?
Is that exactly? Is that what you're really called to do?
When he's on his deathbed, maybe he doesn't have regrets.
Yeah.
But if he does, it's a dark place to be.
Look, and this is where I'm hopeful that dudes like Elon Musk will create these shuttle buses. Like, people are like, you see what's happening? All this automobile automation is taking good people out of their jobs. I'm like, no. If shit jobs like that don't exist, maybe that guy who chose average and mediocre will set his standards just a little higher. He ain't gonna go and be like Gandhi, but he may just decide, you know what, maybe I wanna work at a Starbucks where I can actually greet happy people and not just deal with travelers who are pissed off at the world.
It's funny, we stopped at a Chick-fil-A. We went and it's your fault. We got a German Shepherd Husky puppy, and we're in Delaware, so we traveled to Lancaster to get it. And we stopped at a Chick-fil-A we brought the whole family. But there was an older man, he was like maybe 70, and he was the host. And he was awesome. And I was like, so it just falls right in line with what you said. I was like, that guy was great. He's a reason to go back alone. And that takes you back to that old small business.
Exactly.
And a couple topics there, when you said like Uber and then goes to Uber Eats, well, people say, what about that pizza shop? And I'm like, well, they're entrepreneurs and they're going to figure it out.
Exactly.
Because everyone's always going to want that mom and pop place. And the other ones should be delivered by an Uber driver because they're garbage. they're not challenging themselves, and they accept the defeat of, this technology is improving things. Well, a true entrepreneur will roll with that technology.
We have to evolve in all of life, entrepreneur or not. You evolve or perish. That's just the reality of it, right? Like when you think about even 10 years ago, all the social media didn't exist, and like we read news on a newspaper, and then we wait till tomorrow to see what the news has to say. Today, we can consume information a lot quicker. Like, the human mind and the human body is so adaptable, so pliable, that we can adapt. So when someone's like, well, what about the small little pizzeria, the small little shop? Like, they will adapt. Trust me, if that guy took a risk and he decided, I'm going to sign the front of the check and be an entrepreneur, not sign the back of the check and be an employee, then that guy is willing to figure out a way against Uber Eats and Grubhub to leverage it. In fact, I'll give you a great example. There's a Mediterranean place way in Pomona, so about, 30 minutes from here. We love their food. So my wife orders their food on DoorDash, right? They cancel the order, like the restaurant cancels the order, and then therefore we get refunded the money, right? We get refunded the money. Then they call our house and they go, hey, will you just pay the driver directly? My wife goes, sure. Now remember, when you buy from DoorDash or Uber Eats, any of those, you pay like a 20-25% premium because there's a service fee that has to go to that app. So we're buying their Mediterranean food at a higher price. They figured out that if they just cancel the order, that the DoorDash guy doesn't get paid.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so like the dude's like son, who's like 16 years old, drives up with pimples on his face. Here's your bag of fucking hummus. And then we pay him an obscene amount of money for it that we were gonna, with cash, that we were gonna pay Uber Eats anyway. But there's a family that figured it out.
Hell yeah.
And if you can't figure it out, then you're gonna perish.
Performer perish.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. I wanted to talk about the work you're doing with the project.
Yes.
Specifically one, I think there was a really powerful thing I heard you say before. How long is the project, the duration in hours?
Yeah, so the project, for your audience, in case they don't know, it's a 75-hour experience for men, and I call it the most violent therapy that men will ever experience, because it's 75 hours straight, and your ass is ours for 75 hours. My lead instructor is a angry Navy SEAL, and then we've got this sociopathic Marine who just...
Psycho Marine?
Yeah, I know. Strange. You'd never imagine. Like, his only job is to get guys to ring the bell and quit. And he goes, if one of you, in hour number one, he goes, if one of you motherfuckers accidentally make it to the project graduation dinner on Friday night, and I don't believe that you belong there, I'm going to take this fucking knife, and he pulls his K-bar out, and I'm going to carve this tattoo right off of my fucking hand, because we all have these matching tattoos, the instructors. And I'm like, this motherfucker's serious. Like, if they think he's putting on a show, like Steve's gotten in our face before, the Marine, one of my instructors, when one instructor is like, no, let's give this guy another chance. Steve's like, he's fucking gone. So Steve's like, all right, we'll give him another chance. And then he just like lays into him. He's like, see, he's still ringing the bell. It's like,
right.
Well, you literally dragged him to the bell and hit his head against the fucking bell. But anyways, that one exception aside, I've got a Navy SEAL, a Marine, an MMA fighter, and a SWAT operator as our instructors, and myself. And it's really about helping men get unstuck and unfuck themselves. And I say that because most men, especially men who decide, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I have a wife and kids, and now your wife and your family and your business are competing with each other. And now you're starting to lean into drugs and alcohol, pornography, overeating, just watching too much television and just getting lost in that. You're avoiding and distracting yourself, and there's no more date nights, and your wife becomes an afterthought, and soon you start wondering, like, what is it all for, and am I living my purpose? And men are known to go inward and be so damaging to themselves. And we are taught, like, hey, just suck it up, strong upper lip, you got this, like, be a tough guy. Cool, but where does a dude go when he's sitting in a parking lot in the middle of the afternoon thinking, what is the cleanest way for me to whack myself for my family not to find out, so that they don't have to deal with the trauma of how I'm going to kill myself? Well, I can't just shoot myself. They're going to find my dead body here, and my wife has to identify me. If I go and jump in front of a truck, there's still some level of identification that's going to happen. Like, grown-ass men find themselves sitting there doing that. And you might be like, well, I've never heard that. Well, I'm telling you, you go inject truth serum to any man, and they will tell you that at some point they sat in a parking lot somewhere in their fucking car contemplating the cleanest way they can kill themselves without traumatizing their family. And I am here to serve men because I am that guy. And I know it's the most selfish thing I do is I help these men, because the moment I stop helping these men, I will go right back into my darkness. And so I'm here to help these men say, look, man, there is a brotherhood of men where we can be successful in business, where we don't have to lean into our vices and addictions, where we can love up our wives and have date nights, be great fathers, and we can live a life of purpose, and there is a brotherhood that you belong to, because life inevitably will show up with obstacles and adversity, and when it does, here's a brotherhood of like-minded dudes that have graduated a 75-hour experience that's physically tough, mentally and emotionally tough as well. And so while on video we only show the ice baths and truck pull and beach torture and hikes with logs and tires and all this shit, the whole 75 hours is not that. Much of the 75 hours, in fact, is spent on journaling in our battle books. Books look similar to that, and about like what traumas, like 1 out of every 4 men have been sexually abused. 1 out of every 3 men have been mentally or physically abused. Whether you've been mentally, physically, or sexually abused, it's left some trauma on you. And if you're walking around with like this rage and anger and shame and hate for yourself, how's that showing up for your family, right? It's not. And this is what I said when I felt like I'm making all this money, but I'm about to lose my family. Like, how is that successful? We've defined success as, wow, that person's successful. They were in Inc. magazine 3 times or whatever. Okay, successful in Inc. magazine, a bank account full of money, sitting in a parking lot contemplating suicide. How's that successful? It's not. And so I want to redefine success for men, where if dudes want to be part of a brotherhood where we can openly talk about the shit that bothers us and how tough life is, but then say, now we're going to stop complaining about it and lean into the solution, because one of our things is FIO, figure it out. If you can't figure it out, ask your battle buddy. That's the guy that was in your class with you, who you were equally sized with. And if your battle buddy doesn't know it, then your boat crew knows it. If your boat crew doesn't know it, then your team knows it. Your team doesn't know it. Someone in the brotherhood from the last 14 classes has the answer, right? And so now you're talking about financial planners, real estate guys, tattoo artists, actors, politicians. We've had every type of man go through the project. 25% of the dudes who go through it ring the bell and quit. Another 15% get medically rolled, and they can come back to another class. And those that do graduate after the 75 hours are part of a brotherhood that really focuses on the 4 F-bombs: family, faith, fitness, and finance. And if you can get your 4 F-bombs in order, you have that 5th F-bomb, fulfillment. And every man wants to have a sense of fulfillment, because we know one day we will die. This is why men build shrines to themselves and statues to themselves and monuments to themselves. Like, this is how kings and emperors were like, here's how I become immortal. I build this pyramid, or I build this bridge. And so the greatest thing we can build today is a family that we leave behind, who become our legacy, is a great memory, right? And so the project is it's a men's society. It's something very unique and special, but I only describe it as violent therapy, since I don't know of any other way to describe it.
I just think it's so awesome. Like I said, I've worked with our gym community before, and it's from all different walks of life and different ages. And that, the 5th hidden gem, which is fulfillment, is something it comes up. And sometimes it's with 50-year-olds. And I want them to hear that, what you just said. And like, it's like, how do I, like, when at the time I was maybe 39, or now I'm 40, talk to a 50-year-old about how to find fulfillment. And I'm like, well, hardship, getting through hardship, facing old traumas, questioning your normal patterning or your messaging, and how you turn things off and just don't face those things. To me, that's why fulfillment is not being achieved. And so, like, the project is hardcore, but the one part of it I think is so amazing, which speaks on the trauma, is, I believe it's called toxic cognition.
Toxic cognition,
That's just an amazing proponent of what you guys add in there. And I think there's so many people that they don't understand that they haven't faced trauma. They haven't looked at the trauma in their life and kind of handled it, or even, they pushed it down deep, and it's causing huge problems for them, and maybe they're never going to face it again. But I don't think that's a way to live. And like, I'm a faith-based person, and I'm like, there's no way God wants me to live this damaged.
No, God doesn't
want me to be
want us to
miserable every
suffer.
day because I'm hating on myself because of past trauma that I haven't fixed. And I heard you speak of your therapist before. And so last year when we saw you, we were talking business, and you were like, hold on. Can I ask you a question? You can totally tell me to fuck off if you want. I'm like, sure. And you're like, what's going on, man? And the truth of the matter was, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and a lot of struggles. And so in that year, I was listening to you on a podcast, and you talked about Dr. Kevin Downing. And I'm like, look, I can't find a therapist locally. And I'm like, I don't trust these guys. I need to understand. I'm like, why don't I just look up his therapist across the country? And then he wasn't taking patients. So I talked to his partner. And his partner's like, he gets on
Peter.
and he's like, what's that, Peter?
Peter,
Yeah. So he's like, Antonio, our first call, he's like, I can't treat you. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's a good start. And he's like, my front desk screwed up. Like, I can't treat you from across the country.
Right.
He's like, however, COVID, things are a little looser, maybe if it's not long term. So I started that process based off of your example. And it's been, I got really caught up in the business, so I wasn't doing my self-help. But like, I read the book he recommended to me, which is his awesome book called Addicted to the Monkey Mind, which is a really cool book about how, like we talked about, exploding on something just because of other things. And like, it's our, I'm angry at my kid, but it's really about my insecurities from my past.
Right.
And it's just like, they're taking the brunt of it. And it's just, that deep work is so important. And the stuff you're doing in that project is pretty, I think it's awesome and amazing. Yeah. And I'm sure it's not like your biggest moneymaker. And it really is a testament to like what you're giving back to the world. Yeah. And I know you have the Squire program, which men with their young sons.
And that's massively important, dude, because And that was a byproduct of the project. So once we were about 3, 4 project classes in, a lot of the graduates from the project were like, man, I wish I had something like this when I was younger. I'm like, how come? They're like, well, like I would have learned to have core values when I was younger. So I wouldn't have strayed off the path, wouldn't have given to like peer pressure, and wouldn't have been like looking for other people's validation and approval. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And I kept thinking, I'm like, years ago, I read a book called Raising a Modern Day Knight. And in Raising a Modern Day Knight, the author talks about how for thousands of years, tribes and cultures, like in New Guinea, for example, the dad of a 13, 14-year-old would gather up 5 or 6 of his friends that he respects and he goes hunting with, and so he knows like they're like bonded, we're friends, we got each other's back. And they sneak into the house and they tear the son away from the mom, right? Because remember, moms turn boys or babies into boys. Dads have the opportunity to turn boys into men. And so in New Guinea, what they would do is they would tear that boy away from mom. And of course, mom knew that it was going to happen, so she'd put on a show like, bring back my boy, bring back my son, my poor son. And of course, they take him. And this is just as when the sun is going down at night to the edge of the forest. And dad takes a knife and he cuts the boy's arm just enough where the boy starts bleeding, hands the knife to the boy, and he says, now go into that forest and survive. That you're bleeding, there's obviously going to be predators that are going to smell that blood and want you, and you have to find yourself water, shelter, and food. When you come out, when the sun comes out tomorrow morning, we will be here. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. And as the boy comes out, as the sun comes up, the boy comes out, tired, exhausted, fend for himself, fought for his life. The dad and all his friends hug him, and they say, you've now won a seat at the table for us to groom you as a protector, provider, presider, as a man. Because remember, back then, tribes would go to war, and tribes were just like one little river crossing away, one little hill. On the other side of a hill is your opposing tribe, right? And so it's not much different today. We stopped doing that rite of passage. But when you think about as early as medieval times, knights had squires. And the squire's job was to clean the horse, the armor, and sword fight with the knight. And in the process, the knight would teach that young squire chivalry, how to be a chivalrous young man, right? All that went away. Yet inside of every boy, there's still that need to look up to an older man or an older boy for a rite of passage into manhood. And that's because women or girls go through a very physical transformation when they become women. There's one day you all of a sudden have a period. Oh my God, I'm bleeding. And then you have boobs. And mom says, congratulations, honey, you're a woman now. You're a woman. Like there's a very physical thing that happened. Like what happened to us that says that you're a man? Nothing, right? You got a little horny, you got a little thin mustache, you get some armpit hair, you're a little angry at life and you don't know why. And so you're like, fuck, what do I do? But no one created a rite of passage to say, son, you're now a man, and from this point forward, I will groom you into a leader, into a protector, into a warrior, into a savage, into a servant, into a lover of your family and your community. And because of that, boys go looking at, because we still have that desire for a rite of passage, so we go into gangs, prisons, military, looking for that rite of passage. That's all it is.
Absolutely.
And so we created the Squire program where dads can bring their sons that are 13 to 15 years old to the Squire program, and over 15 hours we put them through much lighter versions of the project. No one's ringing a bell and quitting.
Not cutting an arm off.
No one's cutting an arm. But those boys are taught, core values and character, and that we don't need to walk around trying to plug our umbilical cord into another man's belly button, that you are the man on the white horse. You are the man in your life that's going to gallop in and save your day. Like if you're looking to see who's going to come and save you, you're it. And if you can build a tribe of other men like you, then now you are fortified. And they walk away like, holy crap. And then last thing I tell them at their 15th hour is, now fellas, your dads are going to keep grooming you, along with the men that your dad trusts, into a capable, confident man, because this country is dependent upon you. Like when we're old and we're dead, you and your kids have to keep this going. I said, but if you keep this a secret, then you've done a disservice. And so you guys have to be the pebble that creates the ripple. And so the best way you could do that is not by saying, hey, you should go do the Squire program, but live the tenets of the Squire program. Live the tenets of a modern day knight. And when you do, you know how it is. Like, why do people like all of a sudden are drawn to you like, hey, Antonio, I really respect you. They watch you from afar, like, all right, is this guy really a good dude or is he just fake?
Yeah.
And they see he helps people, he's consistent, he shows up even if, when there's a pandemic, he's still consistent, he's still trying to help society, he's still a good dude. You know what? I'm gonna look up to him. Like, people are always watching. So the best way we can influence anyone is just by living our core values and tenets. And so that's really what the Squire program is. And if we do our job right, as fathers, as men, we will always create the next generation of protectors and providers who will stand in the gap between good and evil when tyrannical politicians attempt to grab absolute power, because absolute power is absolutely corrupt.
Absolutely. And men are the problem.
Yeah.
Like, we are the problem.
We are the
like,
problem.
You know,
Yeah.
we're the
Yeah.
ones that are
Yeah.
in the prisons, and we're the ones doing the
Yep.
mass shootings, and
Yep.
it's not coincidental that it's a man doing it all the time. And it's,
Bro, we build communities and we tear down and we bomb communities. Like, we are the problem. But it's because we have both inside. We have the savage and the servant within. You know, they say every man has two wolves in him.
Yeah.
Which wolf do you want to feed?
feeding, yeah.
And you feed that servant wolf, but it's still a wolf, and it better still know how to be savage when needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And chivalry is just, for me, is code of honor. It's such a thing that's dead these days. And like, what you're doing is 100% following that mission.
Yeah.
And you know, when I was a young kid, I was not following the right path, and my family lied to me. They told me we were going to the beach, and I started realizing we weren't on the way to the beach. They're like, no, we're sending you to a military, or it was like a Catholic military boot camp.
Yeah.
So I like threw my luggage out the window while we were driving. I was like doing anything. But I went, and it was really crazy. Like, these kids, some of them like had never had suntan in their life. Like, it was pretty extreme, like religious people. But the whole code was about like knights. It was about becoming a knight, and we did all the. So I left that like booming when I thought it was going to be like horrible.
Yeah.
And it was basically, you know, when I was a young teenager, a rite of passage of getting through this, learning these values. Of course, it was faith-based as well, but you know, that's kind of what I'm trying to teach too. Like, people are like, why are you always like this? And I'm like, yes, I probably should calm down a little bit, but this is why.
Right.
Because there's a lot at stake. And I just don't see other people giving a shit about what's at stake.
Sure.
And then things are happening, which this isn't promised. This can go away. We have to protect it. We have to learn how to protect it, and then we have to pass it on. So I'm like so supportive of everything you're doing.
Thank you.
And I was joking with them. I was like, East Coast Project?
I like that.
Coming?
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, I love it. And I want to wrap it up, but I also wanted to do a little thing where maybe like Uncle B can give us his quick down and dirty,
Sure.
some guidance for the decade. So for 20-year-olds, what should 20-year-olds be doing right now to better themselves or set themselves up for future success?
I think every 20-year-old should figure out who they are. One of the best ways to figure out who you are is to work out hard, number one. Number two, find someone that you respect and get into their company and work for them. Because if you're like, man, I like how that guy lives his life. Like, I don't care if you're like, I like how he carries himself. I like how he shows up as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a leader. I like the cars that he has. I like the way he donates to causes and charities. So I think working out hard, and you know this, builds a high level of character in someone. Like, how do you stop a man who's willing to go into the gym and go to battle with himself every day with the weights? And when it burns, lactic acid builds up, you tear a muscle, you still find a way to work around all that and to push yourself. You didn't sleep well, you're coming in working out anyway. You had a hard day, you're coming in working out anyway. And that same man learns delayed gratification, because you know this, you can have 10 great workouts back to back and your body still looks the same, but you know the 10,000 workouts back to back, you're a whole different man, you're jacked, look at you, right? And so, but that took time, that took delayed gratification, that took focus, that took consistency. And so people underestimate the power of the gym. And you know what? I've never seen a racist man in the gym. Because
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah. It's like the military, but I never thought about it in the gym.
Probably the same thing.
I see it, but as soon as you said it, I was like,
Bro,
oh shit.
I walk into the gym and I will ask any jack dude, black, white, green, Chinese, to spot me, because if you're jacked, you're going to know how to spot me, and I know you like
Muscles attract.
Yeah, you've grown that big, you've probably had a spotter, and so we're good. We're good. Ain't no problems here. It's funny how racism is
That might
always
be my new
outside of the
marketing
gym
campaign.
doors.
Yeah.
What's that?
That might be my new marketing campaign.
That's right. There's
Let's
no
kill racism.
There's no racism in the
Yeah,
gym.
get in
Yeah.
there.
But you think about it, right? All of a sudden, like you're open to meeting people because you have something in common. So all of a sudden,
Bleed together, sweat together.
bam, right? There's something powerful about it. So 20-year-olds, get in the gym, start working out like a savage, transform your body. When you do, you will also transform your confidence, your self-esteem, and your thought patterns. And then, of course, find someone that you respect and work for them for 2 to 3 years and learn their patterns of life so that you can model it.
Absolutely, being a sponge. That's what I try to tell people. I'm like, even if it's a bad experience, it's gonna. And I heard from your story and my story, we saw bad leaders that we worked with.
Yeah.
But we learned from it. We learned
Yeah.
what not to do, and we learned what we like to see in good leaders and who attracts us. So that's
Exactly.
right in line with this kind of stuff I've been tell the 20-year-olds that are in our gym, and just who I come in contact with, and just more experience. The more you experience, the better. You know.
Yeah.
Now 30s, it's a tricky era.
Yeah, 30s is a tricky era because I say that right around our teens, through our 20s, men especially, we go into what I call jackassville. We just start acting like a jackass. Right. Is that when yours was?
It was like, it took 24, I admitted it, 25, I re-admitted it, 27, I was like, I probably should do something.
Okay.
29, I was like, almost ready.
That's so funny. Mine was 26, 27. Yeah. That's why I'm laughing about it. And so, like, like I imagine all these men are nodding their heads right now. But men are in jackassville from their like teens to their mid-20s, late 20s. As you get into your 30s, you start looking to settle down, to start a family, to really get your bearings. And I'm going to tell you this right now, men. The number one determining factor, and this isn't just me saying this has been scientifically proven, the number one determining factor to your success or failure is who you choose as a spouse. If you marry crazy, you are fucked. If you marry someone that has your back, that supports you, she is a force multiplier of what your life's purpose is. And then you better be a force multiplier of what her purpose is. And if you're like, hey, I don't align with her personal purpose. Like I remember telling my wife, and people can send all the hate mail they want. You can just find me on Instagram at Bedros Keuilian, because here it goes. I told my wife, listen, you working is not a priority to me. Mm-hmm. The number one priority when I marry you is that my kids never see the inside of a daycare. And my kids are never going to be latchkey kids. Like you working is not a priority. I will make us money. You make sure our kids are raised well and they never see the inside of a daycare. She was like, on board with that. And I'm like, and I'm going to start businesses and I need you to get my back on that. She's like, boom, done. I knew that my wife was going to be a force multiplier for me. And then here we are 19 years later with an empire.
Yeah, together.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I sat across from Kelly, our first date, it was like, there's no like beating around the bush. Like I want to try to have a family, and I want to be old-fashioned, and I'm going to do whatever I can to support. You know what I mean? It was like, that's what's coming on day one. You're just going to hear this because I have no time to waste.
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe you need to waste time. I don't even believe you need to date, to be honest with you. I think you need to better yourself first.
Yeah.
Number one, and then it's going to come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And once it comes, you have to be true. You don't just say, oh, well, she doesn't have this, and this. You got to be a man and see the woman in her and the future of what does it align with your goals, whatever it is. Maybe it's to not have kids and to both be entrepreneur. Who knows what? But it needs to be aligned. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, could you imagine if my wife was like, hey, man, no, I want to go have a career? I would say, cool, I support you 100%. Right. We're just not meant to be.
Right.
But she was like, you know what? I share that same vision. I think that a mom is more capable at raising 2 awesome babies than 2 random fat people at a fucking kindercare, right? Who don't give a shit about your kids and would rather eat Cheetos out of a bag than take care of your kids. So having said that, I'll raise our kids. And today my wife is getting her PhD program in psychology from Pepperdine because she delayed that gratification. But she also said, motherfucker, we better not have to suffer in life.
Right.
And I was like,
don't
worry.
Once you told her that, like, I better get my business boots on.
Right, exactly. And that's what I did. I was like, well, now I got to show up as a man. Mm-hmm. Now I got to show up as an entrepreneur. I can't be like, well, it didn't work out, so now I'm going to go get a day job. And then now we're living below our means because my wife is trying to raise the kids so she can't have a job. And I've got some job and I'm working for the man trying to grow his company. So I had to do my part and step up. And she did her part. And I think that's the thing, man. Both roles have such amazing value to bring. Mm-hmm. But when people start getting all the roles mixed up and genders mixed up and they start creating all this...
There's a reason why it's always worked.
They complicate shit. Yeah. It's simple. It's simple if you can just be on the same page from jump.
From the jump. That's like the number one thing, just from the jump.
That's it.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, I know people go through it and the struggles and the divorce rate and everything, and it's just like having that conversation. And I found a lot of value, and I gave my people this advice, and I haven't necessarily done this with Kelly, but like just sitting across from each other, I'm like, what are your 3 needs? These are my 3 needs. can you just give me that? Oh, that's all you need? Like, you need to be like,
Right?
Kelly, I love you. That's I don't show softness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm hard. It's just like I don't tap into that her
Right.
emotional need. If she just says what she needs, sometimes it's like I'm being sarcastic about it, but then I'll show her in another way, like, I love you.
Yeah.
You know, does that get my point for today? But I think that's important, whether it's like physical. I need, because when you don't get your needs, even you can't have like a million, that's when problems start to arise, especially like lack of physical, even lack of physical touch, you know, and her emotional need, whatever it is. I mean, if you're very truthful with each other, it gets a little easier. It's like, okay, shit, that makes sense.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That is very true.
And then, so we're going into the 40s now,
Yeah.
the new decade.
So in the 40s, and I just learned this recently. I don't know if you know this or not. My wife told me because she's going through her PhD program for psychology. But young adulthood, bro, this blew me away, is 18 to 40 years old. Young adulthood. So she goes, you know, I understand why you now care for other men more, why you care for other people more, why you pull over when you see a car pulled over. Hey, can I help you? Everything okay? She goes, like, there's something in us once we gone on the other side of 40s, apparently, where we want to impart wisdom, we want to share, we want to support. We become less selfish, more selfless. And I realized that. Like, all my blingage, my fancy watches, like a $400,000 of, they're not even watches, they're timepieces. Anything more than $10,000 is a timepiece. And I got a lot of them. They just sit there in those little boxes that do this, and they wind themselves. But those things don't matter to me anymore.
Yeah.
Like, anything physical doesn't matter to me anymore. What matters is like, what message can I impart? How can I touch your heart? How can I touch your life? How can I give you just another edge in life? And I realized that, I forget what the term was, but that second part of life from 40 to, you know, our 80s, and then I imagine past our 80s, we become little babies again where we shit ourselves. We become needy, and that's where I plan on dying before that happens. But in our 40s, what I found is that your job is to mentor. Your job is to serve. Your job is to breed others like you, if you are good at what you do. And that is where you will find your greatest amount of fulfillment. You won't find it in making more money. Like going from $10 million to $20 million to $50 million to $100 million in revenue did not make me any happier. Helping men and their sons, helping my son and his friends, opening up my gym to my son and his friends, helping other young men. That's what truly gives, like, I sleep well at night when I'm like, I helped that guy out, and we hugged afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, I can, in my 40s, I can hug belly to belly with another man. You know, pre-40s, you kind of do that halfway hug.
Right.
Bro, I just bring it in. Like, I bring it in, and it's like, oh, hey, that's a dad hug.
Yeah.
You know, and they feel good about it. So I think the advice I would give men is get so comfortable in your skin so that you could be a dad to the young man who didn't have a dad figure. You can be an uncle to the young man who didn't have an uncle figure. You could be a big brother who didn't have a big brother figure. You can be a mentor to the young man who didn't have a mentor figure. But the only way that happens is if you've done the self-work. Because if you're just a 45-year-old man-child,
Right.
you're a liability and not an asset to humanity.
Yeah. And then the 50s and beyond, you're looking at, like, what I see a lot is just the fulfillment. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have that fulfillment, or they'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And I just think, what is your advice, do you think? I mean, I know you're not there yet, but that's the new decade you're entering into. And what are you looking for yourself as you go forward?
I think, because I'm 48 years old, I think what my 50s are going to look like and what healthy 50s look like, and I'm very self-aware these days, is how do I multiply my impact? So when I look at the project, and there's a guy named Tyson Durfee, he's a cowboy, and he's so rad, man. He is one of the top cattle wrestlers. So like they're on a horse and they lasso the little cow and they jump off and they tie the legs. Like he sets like world records of that. Like legend, you know, hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, been on stages everywhere. And he went through the project, and now he's creating a program called the Cowboy Way, right? How fucking cool is that? Yeah. The Cowboy Way, the cowboy ethics, the cowboy work ethic. And so through Tyson, look at the impact I'll create. And so I realized in my 50s, 60s, and beyond, it's like, who all did I create? Like this young man right here, Leighton, my son, Andrew, you that I've had impact on, right? And we're like 8 years apart. Ed, to see how Ed changed. Like Ed is Joan's husband, and he's in more sports, more activities like jujitsu, biking. He'll do what, hiking, whatever it takes, overlanding, in better shape today than he was when we met 10 years ago. And it's like, when I hear that, hey, you had a little impact on me because of that. Like Sunday night, when I walk into BK Strength, my gym, only person I see in there is Ed. You know what I mean? We're like, hey, what's up, Ed? It's like, I know I'm going to see Ed. And as I drive up, there's Ed's car, right? Because like, that's what a man does.
Yeah.
Like you just get that workout in, no more excuses. And so imagine through all of you, the impact that I get to make.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what my 50s, 60s and beyond are going to be like. And I think that's what it should be for, otherwise you feel like I squandered my life. I'm not going to be remembered. And that leaves for a lot of regret. And I think regret leads to suicide for men. Yeah.
And that deathbed regret, you know, is just like, can't imagine how bad that must be.
Yeah.
And like, that was kind of the purpose of this podcast today, was to come out here and get that advice from you. And it's like, if you're not doing work, it's time to get to work. And if you're confused and lonely because you're working your ass off and you're not getting a pat on the back, it's because you're a tree.
Yeah.
And people are branching off you. And that's what I think you just explained. And I think for me, it's a good driving force as well, as going into this new decade. And like, maybe you're not always going to get the pat on the back, but there's people that are watching that are going to do something different in their life because of the impact you're giving them. And it's not about giving yourself a pat on the back. It's just, that's the right reason to do something.
Yeah. I mean, bro, when I think about like the two greatest elders in my life, my dad and Jim Franco, one of my old personal training clients who became a mentor and one of my first business partners, loaned me money to open up a gym. I talk about Jim Franco in my book. I talk about Jim Franco here on podcasts till many years later, like 2 decades later, I'm talking about Jim Franco and my dad, like two of the greatest influences in my life. My dad would risk his life to bring us to this country. And then Jim Franco, like he had gone through 3 bankruptcies, 2 divorces, and he was still struggling to make it as an entrepreneur, and he finally did. And then that's when he hired me as a personal trainer. And when I met him, he was coming up in his 60s. In his 60s. I was in my late 30s and 40s when I found financial success. He found it in his early 60s. He's like fucking Colonel Sanders, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken man. Whereas, so like their legacy, when my dad dies and when Jim Franco dies, I will keep talking about them. My son will keep talking about them. And hopefully when I die, this young generation that I've gotten to touch and impact and influence a bit will talk about me. And through that, I will live forever.
Yeah. And that's why I'm here today. I mean, I respect what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I see a lot of the people in the game, essentially, that kind of I don't trust, you know, and I like what you're doing. I believe in, and I want to support it and get the word out and do, you know, be that branch off that tree. Especially with my past as a drill instructor, you know, taking young men and turning them into Marines was the best thing I've done, you know, not forever, but it had a huge impact on me. And I got out right after that, so it's just such an important thing for me, and that's why I care so much, because I know what it's like to just be going along compared to actually, you know, shooting for the mountaintops and the difference of that. I wanted to give your book a commercial, just because you don't have to do it, but it's called Man Up, but it's also about humaning up. It's not just men, it's also for women. And to learn more about Bedros, I highly recommend it. And the biggest thing I love about it is like how raw you are in telling your hardships, because I think that people don't see that side of the story when they are in this new social media world. And you're taking it on your shoulders to be a leader in that space, which is difficult because you're going to be under constant scrutiny, which takes a whole nother level of courage. But I'm sure you feel a calling to do it because people are going to be influenced one way or the other. So if you can influence them in a good way, I'm sure, you know, that's like, shit, I got to do this.
That's exactly right.
And I did want to talk, one last thing to close it out was about confidence. And we talked a lot about confidence and faith, but we also talk about how scared we are to do the things we don't feel comfortable with. And I know last year when I came out to see you, you were a little bit late for the meeting, and you came in and you're like, and later on in the meeting you told us, you're like, I had to rev myself up. And I was like, you're getting nervous about us coming?
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. You know, I was nervous about meeting you then. I was nervous about doing this today. So even though we might come off a certain way with a lot of confidence, and we're real men in that we can share our vulnerabilities and say when we're uncomfortable, we just got to do it. And we feel called to do it. And so that was kind of the purpose of today. So Bedros, I'm really thankful for this opportunity.
Brother. Thank you.
And of course, you know, where can people find more about you? You have so many things going on right now.
Yeah, I think the easiest place to find me is on social media, specifically Instagram at Bedros Keuilian. And then from there, if my wacky rants and weird position on life makes sense to you, then give me a follow. Yeah.
Or they can slide over to the Modern Day Night Project.
That's right. Yeah. If you're crazy enough to do the Modern Day Night Project, it will change you.
Maybe I'll make a Bedros Light page one day.
That's right.
All right, not allowed to say these things. All right, well. All right, well, thanks again. And
Thank
guys,
you.
I hope you enjoyed the show. You took some value. That's always the mission of the podcast. So thanks again, guys. Cool. Thank you, Bedros.
Crushed it, bro. You're so natural at this, man.
Really?
Yeah.
I was nervous.
Yeah. Well, good nerves are healthy. Good nerves are healthy.
Yeah.
When we're not nervous, like when I'm not nervous and I feel like, why am I not nervous? I'm going to fuck something up from it. Because when you're nervous, I think all your senses are heightened.
Yeah.
You know?
There's so much to what you're saying that I want to dive deeper into. And
Yeah.
I'm